Hi, my name's Corbett Harrison, and my students are always writing throughout the learning process. I'm a strong believer in writing across the curriculum. And the trick with writing across the curriculum is you've got to have ways to have students write that surprise them. And that's why I'm talking today about one of my favorite books, 51 Wacky Research Reports by Barry Lane, which gives you 51 ways to surprise your students with a piece of writing. And I'm going to talk about one of his ideas, the Wacky Report Card. Over the years, I've adapted it, and I'm going to share some of my adaptations to share what I've learned in using this particular writing strategy with my students. You know, we are in this era of nonfiction being, we're expected to use a lot more nonfiction in the classroom because of the Common Core's expectations, and that means textbook, but also scholarly articles, magazine articles, primary source documents, and many teachers are having their students, once they absorb these nonfiction, these pieces of nonfiction, in doing a small piece of writing. And we always ask them, hey, write it in your own words. Don't just copy it, write it in your own words. Well, that's kind of a weird way of putting it because our students don't own their own words. What we're asking is for them to take the idea and phrase it in a different way so that it doesn't sound like we copied it right out of the textbook or the article. The problem is, I don't think in school we explicitly teach that skill enough, and after using Wacky Research Reports, as long as I have, I find myself explicitly teaching it a lot more, and I want to share those techniques to you today as I talk about my adaptation of this great idea by Barry Lane. Hey, we all probably went to the same school more or less, where at some point some teacher came in with a set of encyclopedias and said, all right, you all write reports and here's where you're doing your research. And problem is, without explicit instruction, it's impossible or incredibly hard not to find yourselves copying entire phrases or sentences out of something like the encyclopedia. I can tell you that my 4th grade report on Thomas Jefferson and my 5th grade report on the state of Colorado were probably heavily plagiarized, and it's just because I wasn't taught not to do that. Today I'm going to try to show you what that looks like. And you know, I think the big problem is we have them do a little bit of writing and then we want them to start writing something bigger, but we let them keep the piece of nonfiction in front of them, and it sort of becomes a crutch to our students that they don't know how to exactly put it, so they go back to the article. Oh, there's how the article put it. You know, if you do a Wacky Research Report well, you can put the research away and students can just use the Wacky Research in order to write bigger things, because that's what we're expected to do in school when we teach more nonfiction, is to eventually get them to write longer things completely in their own words. I'm going to share what that looks like. First of all, let's talk very quickly about Wacky Research. As I said, one of my favorite books. Barry believes in teaching with your sense of humor and learning with your sense of humor as a way to tap into those deeper parts of your brain. Barry is a very funny guy, a very wise guy, and he's a wise guy at the same time. He's very smart in the fact that he can make humor out of things that you normally wouldn't expect there to be humor in. It's because he's thinking about it with a deeper part of his brain, and he tries to pass that on to his students and for other teachers to pass that on to their students. He believes that students, when they're challenged with a interesting or unique form of writing, they should be allowed to do group writing ahead of time, and that's why it's called research, not research. Interpersonal learners, as we're learning in my class, are at risk in school because they're not allowed to talk out often enough as they're learning, and for them to do group writing together, that's a great way to get your interpersonal learners talking out the process so they can hear how one another think and process better. And then finally, the book really is about research and how to put research into your own words. The book gives you tasks that if you wrote them, there's no possible way you could plagiarize them. Very quickly, I have a long history with Barry Lane. Back in the 2000s, we got a grant and ordered hundreds of copies of these books for our local teachers in a Writing Across the Curriculum initiative. And for 15 hours, we taught them how to use the books and how to avoid plagiarism and get them to really think deeply. Barry actually came and presented a few times at our class, and we were lucky to have them. But as the process evolved, we did the class probably 7 or 8 times. We also created a sister website for the for the in-service class where teachers could go back and revisit resources. Barry gave us permission to put 4 of the 51 ideas from this book up online so that teachers could get an idea of how they are before they decide to order the book. The 4 that are up online, he has one called Rare Photographs, which are nice short ones. I use them as exit tickets. Wacky Wanted posters are a funny one. I see a lot of science teachers and social studies teachers using this one. I have a video on wacky recipe poems, which I think work for any content area. And then this particular presentation is on wacky report cards. If you want to find that website where these are posted, as it says there, and where it's bolded as the word Google, just type Writing Fix Wacky Research in. The top link that should come up is the link that is the class that we created. So how do I get wacky research, crazy report cards, make students understand what they are? First of all, model. That's good for your mastery learners. Show them a model or a mentor text. We just got in September of 2016 a really cool new mentor text for Crazy Report Cards in honor of what would have been his 100th birthday, Roald Dahl. He was the author of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, the BFG, and lots of pretty morbid short stories, if you know your Roald Dahl. They published his report card when he was an 8th grader or a 9th grader. If you can go online and Google Roald Dahl report card and find this image and look at it in great detail. But what's nice about the report card that he got was there's not only grades posted, it's the British version of giving student grades, but then there are teacher comments. Report cards today don't have lots of comments on them, but here's a good example of a report card that has comments on them. For example, in English, he's decidedly better, that says. In French or in Latin, he's inconsistent, not strong in this subject. If he used more common sense, he would make progress. That's a great detailed piece of feedback that the report card gave. In French, he began better, but has deteriorated lately almost to his September level, largely through carelessness. There's some good specific feedback that he's getting from his teachers. Report cards today, these are old report cards too, but students recognize this as a more kind of report card that they would get. On the left-hand side, that is E.E. Cummings, the poet's report card, and he's getting G's, I assume, for good, and E's for excellent, but there aren't any comments. And same thing with Ernest Hemingway's report card on the right-hand side, his high school report card. He got good grades, but the only thing they put in the remarks was a stamp, completed, except for Latin. He got an A for April for some reason. You know, it reminds me of our report card system where you can put canned comments in. They're not really specific feedback to that particular student. Kids are used to this kind of report card, and so it's important for them to see a report card like Roald Dahl's, or this is the old example I used to use. It's Winston Churchill's report card. Now I have 2 report cards I can share with my students that show here's where you're getting the grade, and here are the specific comments that a teacher would be giving you. Students, like mastery students, need to see a physical example before this works, and I always like to show them a real world example, and so these have been good finds for me that I use in the teaching process when I'm presenting Crazy Report Cards. Now here's the Crazy Report Card that actually comes from Barry's book. Here's the idea. All right. The students, you have to imagine, have done some research on the common housefly, and they've been asked to invent fly school. If flies all went to a school, what subjects would they be going to? What would their grades be? And then the teacher would give them commentary on the grades. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. In flying, which is one of the subjects they've decided is at flying school, the subject here, Musca, they've decided to give him a name. I believe that's based on the Latin name of a housefly. Musca's doing well. His wing beats are up to 330 times a minute. Now that's a fact these students learn about the housefly, and rather than writing it exactly the way they found it in their article, they were forced to put it into a comment that a teacher might leave. And so these are written in the voice of a teacher. So it avoids them going to just copying straight sentences out. They have to put it in the voice of something. You'll see that they got a grade for egg laying. They got a grade for reading. If you look at those comments, which I encourage you to do, you'll notice that they have facts embedded in them, facts that were learned by the students in doing their research. This is the bottom half of the report card. Disease spreading, she's only getting a C+ in disease spreading, but there's some good facts in there that the students have taken from the research, and they've created this report card. Now, when I do this activity in class, it's a good, you've got an example that shows a housefly. To stick in the animal kingdom is where I start, but you can go beyond that, which I'll show you in a moment. But how I do it when I start with teachers is, this is a fact of a list of facts about the humpback whale that I created after just doing some research online. I think there's about 20 to 25 facts about the humpback whale. We then, as a class, and when I'm talking to you now, this is what we do with the teachers that I work with during the class that I was teaching them about Wacky Research. Students read the content alone. You can highlight, but you're reading it by yourself. And then we get to the we part. They discuss the content in a small group. What are the most interesting facts is often how I get the prompts of a group discussion going, and students converse about the information that they've just read in nonfiction form. Students then brainstorm, all right, if we were going to invent a school called Whale School, what classes might a humpback whale be forced to take in Whale School? And then, as a group, they work together to create a poster version of a report card. While they're doing that, I start to collect back the articles, these lists of facts, because I want them to take the facts that they discussed from their brains and put them in their own words, and having the information sitting in front of them, well, it doesn't let them put them in their own words. Here is a good example of these teachers created this. They gave the humpback whale the unfortunate name of Humpy, and Humpy is not doing very well in the 4 subjects, which is what I asked the students to come up with. But you can, if you read the comments, they're totally in the group's own words. They're not copying from the piece of research anymore, the list of facts about a humpback whale. These posters then decorate the room. We surround ourselves with report cards. We have a discussion as a class using just the words on the report cards as our reference. The article got taken away, so when we have that discussion, they cannot just go back and read a fact off of the original article. And then when we're surrounded by all of these posters that have all these interesting facts, I give them a suggested graphic organizer. This is great for your mastery learners. I do tell my students that they don't always have to follow the graphic organizer I gave to them, as long as they can create an organizer that organizes themselves. But here's a nice standard one I would give my students that would set them up to write a 5-paragraph essay about humpback whales. If you look at the middle 3 paragraphs, explore one interesting set of facts that about whales that complement each other. Students would not be using the articles to get those facts. They would be using the comments that are written in other people's words from the report cards to do that and to organize this graphic organizer. And that is how you take the research away so that students can't use it as a crutch to fall back on. I've seen report cards in almost every subject area because we had so many teachers take this. Here's some math examples where they researched famous mathematicians. I'm going to go through these quickly. You can pause and read them a little more carefully if you'd like. But teacher comments for mathematicians. I only have 15 minutes for this video, so I'm going to go through them quickly. Again, you can pause. And so let's talk about how the Crazy Report Card fits on Silverstrong and Perini's 4 different learning styles. And by far, I think the 2 learning styles that would enjoy the Crazy Report Card the most are your interpersonal learners, because there's role playing where you get to play the teacher's voice. Interpersonal learners like that. Their first attempt or attempts should be done in small groups where they can work on it together and talk it out. The self-expressive learners, I think, would benefit from this because you have to create a creative context or a fake school in which to present your ideas and come up with crazy ideas for classes and then fun ideas to work facts into comments. So those 2 learners will probably get the most out of this, but don't rule out your others. With your mastery learners like that expected format of a piece of writing. So subject, grade, comment, that works good for your mastery learners, plus that graphic organizer. If they write something bigger, that would be good for them. I've used real world models in my instruction. I have the new Roald Dahl one that I'm going to be using this year, but That's really great for your mastery learners. And then finally, understanding learners can create those categories based on research for those that would become the fake classes. And it's also an opportunity to apply their own metacognition. And so just very quickly, thanks to Barry Lane for his great book, Wacky Research Report. I hope you like this idea.